Evening, everybody. Hopefully, you can all see me and hear me. That would be useful too. I'm Martin from Pothecary Gin, and in the words of Monty Python, now for something completely different. So you've all, I'm sure, had a few G&Ts by now, and I'm guessing that you're probably just getting into the mood for things to get a little bit more interesting, perhaps. I don't know, but hopefully that's the case. So I want to start with the first main thing, and the main thing is obviously juniper. So my juniper is organic, as is my spirit that I use, plus all the other botanicals, of course. But it's very important to me for everything to be organic. That's something I believe in, something that I follow in my life, and therefore it's only natural, I suppose, that it follows in the way I make my gin. So juniper for me comes from Serbia, which is outside of the EU, as we will be soon, but that's another story. So organic Serbian juniper is the key to all of my gins. Now, all of my gins are quite juniper-led, so there's quite a lot of juniper in all of them. If you take an average bottle of my gin, for example, nearly half is just pure juniper distillate. So there's an awful lot of juniper in my gin. To give you an idea, we talk about juniper as being berries. Actually, they're not. They're tiny little pine cones, sort of inside-out pine cones, so they look like a berry, but they're not really berries at all. And if you take a bottle of Gordon's gin, for example, a 70cl bottle of Gordon's, you can expect 3 or 4 of those little tiny juniper berries in a bottle of Gordon's. In mine, there's about 25, and mine's a 50cl. So an awful lot more juniper goes into my gin than, say, a standard bottle of something like Gordon's. That means you get more flavour, more aroma. It's a kind of a natural thing. The other main thing I'd like to tell you about my gin, and the reason I say now for something completely different, is that my gin is made in a different process to the vast majority of gins, and certainly those that you've already seen tonight. So the difference is the way I make it. Now you can see the stills here behind me, alongside me. These are ancient alembic copper pot stills in terms of design. These are exactly the same as they were thousands of years ago. So as soon as copper was available for use to make stills, this is the style that they were made in, and they are the genuine article. They're heated with a direct heat source, which is gas, so you get a natural flame, which is very controllable, as I'm sure most of you know. It's easier to control in terms of the amount of heat that you deliver to the copper pot. So the difference in the way I process or make my gin, the process is different, is that I distill each botanical on its own, one at a time. Then I blend those individual distillates, and then I dilute with water to the strength that I serve at. So very different process to London Dry. As I think Skywave mentioned earlier, London Dry process is all the botanicals plus your liquid, including your alcohol, goes in here at once, and then whatever comes out, the vapor is then condensed. You're only then allowed to add water, and that's it. So it's a very different process. Now, part of the benefit of that process for me as a distiller is that I don't need to use things that have been mentioned earlier this evening, such as orris root and angelica root, which are, as was earlier mentioned, fixing botanicals. And the fixing botanicals job, as was mentioned before, is to kind of try and separate flavours and aromas, and also give a roundness to the gin. I don't need to do that because all of mine are separately distilled. So the whole point of this gin was to create something that was distinctive, different, interesting. So the best thing to do is crack open your bottle. I think we're waiting a bit too long for that. Let's get things moving. So let's get the bottle open. You don't really need to pour it even to get the smell initially. There's an instant aroma of lavender, an aromatic floral style, which is key to this gin. The other key thing about it is that it's a genuinely sippable gin. So you can drink it on its own, and it has got a really nice, smooth, textured mouthfeel. So that's something very different. I'm going to go through the botanicals and the reason why it ends up like that. So the reason, one of the reasons is, as I say, the process of production is different. It gives me greater control over each individual distillation for each botanical, which means I can assess each one in terms of character and also quality as I go. The key one, obviously, is juniper. So I use these two guys here. They're the main stills that I use for juniper predominantly. And one of these will produce around about enough distillate to make 90 bottles at a time. So the maximum, obviously, in one go I can do is roughly 180 bottles at a time in terms of the juniper distillate only. I've got also a 40-litre still just around here that you can't see just behind me there. And this is my tiny little experimental one, which I use for everything. So every single botanical I've ever distilled goes through this tiny little one first, just to make sure it's okay can it works. Once I'm happy with that, then I can increase production up to these, either the 40 or occasionally up to the larger 60-litre ones if I want to make a bigger batch of one of the particular distillates. So that's how the process differs to most gin that's available on the market. There are others that do it the same way as me. There's not that many in the UK that do it that way because of this historical link to London Dry process. Of course, the London Dry process is the thing now, but originally it was a remark about a style of gin in London at that time in the 1700s, which is no longer relevant. Because as you know, you can buy 50 different London Dry gins today and they all taste different. So it's no longer about style, it is literally just about that process. So going back to my gin, just while you're having a little smell, and I would recommend you can probably add a little bit of tonic if you want to have a little drink at the same time. I've got the same tonic as you guys, funnily enough. Mine's not in a can, but nonetheless, same thing. So Pothecary Gin, the 5 botanicals, there's only 5 botanicals in here. I know people talk about the number of botanicals, and obviously there's a product that I'm sure you're familiar with called Monkey 47, which has 47 botanicals in it, which for me is more of a marketing trick than anything else, or a story, I should say. Not a trick. But the thing is, the human palate can only detect certain things in certain numbers, and it's actually far too sophisticated to be able to identify 47 different botanicals in a gin, in my opinion. And even beyond 5, 6, 7 is stretching things a little. Some people may be able to do it, experienced tasters. I've got a lot of experience, and I'm qualified in wines and spirits, so I know what I'm doing, and I can't detect more than 5, maybe 6, possibly 7. So beyond that, it becomes very difficult. This one, luckily for us, only has 5 botanicals. Obviously, juniper is the key one, as I've mentioned, the organic Serbian juniper. So that's the key one. That gives you that kind of piney, resinous, earthy texture and flavour and aroma that you expect from juniper, and that's the key thing. Juniper is gin, and gin is juniper, or it should be, and that's something that really is worth taking away. The other 4 in here, we haven't got smell-o-vision, unfortunately, because they are amazing. The first one, which gives you your key aromatic, is lavender. Now these are organic, food-grade lavender flowers from Provence in France, and these actually are so aromatic. You only have to take the lid off this jar, and it just fills the room with the aroma. They're fantastic. Now, I would buy British if I could, but I can't get A, organic certified lavender flowers, and B, I can't get them that are already removed from the stems, which is a very, very time-consuming and laborious process that doesn't really add anything to the end product. So if I can avoid doing that, obviously I will. And these are the best that I can find that are not British, unfortunately. But they are from Provence, and if nothing else, it gives you a good excuse to go to Provence just to have a smell of these fantastic lavender flowers. So that's one of your key aromatics right there. The second one, which some people get more than others, and obviously we all smell and taste things very differently. The second one is lemon. Now these peels that I've got in here are dried, but I dried these myself. These are all from organic Sicilian lemons. Now Sicilian lemons are fantastic, and everybody understands the link between Italy and lemons, north to south actually, but particularly in Sicily. And these are wonderful, wonderful lemons. They come in boxes of 8 or 10 kilos. They all have to be peeled by hand. And then the peel I also use it fresh. So this is dried, and I've dried this in my own humidifier. But this is the dried version. I also use fresh, as I say, and the only reason I can do that all year round is by freezing it. So all the lemons are peeled, maybe 100, 200 kilos, and then half of it is dehydrated into fresh, dried peel like this, which smells absolutely amazing. And the rest is literally wrapped in plastic bags and straight in the freezer. So that gives me a consistency for the whole year. I know exactly how much I need, or roughly how much I need. It's a bit of a guess, to be honest. But I can use that fresh peel along with this, and I use a mixture of the two, because the fresh peel gives you that zingy, fresh citrus sort of tang that you want from fresh peel. But this gives you almost a lemon marmalade kind of character, because it has effectively been sort of dried and cooked slightly. So that's the difference. That's the lemon peel. The next one, now I don't know of very many other people that use this in the UK. This is something called tilia flowers, or we know it in the UK as lime tree or linden. and these are the flowers, and there's a little bit of foliage in there too. So these give again a very aromatic, fascinating aroma of black tea and honey. Now, it was the honey really that I was after, but the black tea was a bonus, to be fair, and it works really well. A lot of places around Europe, Central Europe, will use this as an infusion, a tea infusion, against things like coughs and colds because of that honey character and the black tea. So that's something to consider with that. But it does have another side effect when it's in blossom, which is perhaps not so good for hay fever sufferers, such as myself, which is that it has an enormous amount of pollen and it fills the air. So if you want to avoid that, then don't go to Central Europe and start inhaling around these trees, because they will set your hay fever off fantastically well. But it does smell amazing. So that's Tilia flowers. And then the final one, which is probably the most important in terms of what it does to the gin as a drink, is actually black mulberries. Now, black mulberries, I mean, it's difficult to sort of show you those, but they're kind of like a cross between a blackberry and a raspberry. They're sort of long like a raspberry, bit black, like a blackberry, and these are dried. So these are dried so that they are no longer got enough moisture in them that they can rot or get mildew or any mold and that sort of thing. So these are dried, and they are absolutely delicious. They've got obviously a huge amount of anthocyanin in the black colour of the skin of the fruit, and these are fantastic for you as a product to eat. If, for example, you could swap out your raisins and sultanas from your muesli and put a handful of these in instead, these have a fantastic quality of actually being able to manage your blood sugar level at a standard level throughout the day if you eat a handful of these for breakfast. Fascinating fact. Something you may want to look up, particularly if you have type 2 diabetes or something like that, or you're pre-diabetic. And they also just taste fantastic. The only thing I would say is if you eat too many of these, much in the same way as if you drink red wine, that colour comes with a price. It turns your teeth grey. Anyhow, black mulberries. So they are your 5 botanicals. So you've got juniper, which obviously gives you that piney juniper character, which you want in gin. That is the whole purpose of gin. That's the roots of gin. And then beyond that, the key aromatics in this particular gin, the Blue Label Pothecary Gin, the original flagship brand, is lavender, as I said, from Provence, Sicilian lemon, which I just use the peel, not the whole fruit, Tilia flowers, which I said is got this really interesting honey and tea character, and black mulberries. Now what happens is the mixture of those distillates, they're all distilled on their own individually, as I said, and then blended together and then diluted to strength with New Forest spring water. The beauty of the relationship between those, once they're blended and diluted, is that you get all of the aromatic quality. So you can still smell and taste that lavender and that lemon in there, particularly if you garnish with lemon perhaps, but nonetheless, even if you don't, you can still smell the lavender. It's a key aromatic. And the other thing is you also get a smoothness on the palate. Now, if you've got some gin there that you haven't started to put in your G&T yet, you can sip it, you can try it neat. There's 2 ways that you should try gin professionally. One is neat and one is with water. And I don't expect anyone at this time of the evening to probably have some water to hand to try and dilute their gin a little bit to taste it like that. But if you do have the occasion to do it, then please do. It just lets the compounds in the gin expand a little bit with water without affecting any flavour or aroma character. So that's the whole point. Quite often you'll go to a show or an event and they'll give you one of these ISO tasting glasses, which are fantastic. They're actually designed for wine, these ones, but you can get specific ones for spirits. You don't see them very often. You see these more often. And a little bit of gin in here, a little bit of water, and you can smell it and you can taste it just like that. And it's absolutely a brilliant way of tasting the spirit as it is delivered. So you don't get any confusion in terms of flavour or aroma. So that's one thing to do. If you usually drink it with tonic water, as 65 or 70% of the public tend to do, that's absolutely fine. I would recommend a plain, unflavoured tonic water, so standard Indian tonic water is the best. We're using Franklin's, obviously, to try and sort of keep in sync with you guys. Generally speaking, if I buy tonic, which isn't very often, I have to be honest, because tonic producers fall over themselves to give you their tonic to show with your gin. But if I buy tonic, I tend to buy Waitrose Essential. I've got one here, and this is the thing and it doesn't do any more than exactly what it's meant to do, which is give you a longer drink. As long as you've got ice and a slice or something that you can garnish your gin with, it works absolutely fine. Absolutely no need to spend a huge amount of money on tonic, although obviously tonic producers will tell you otherwise. If you've got a slightly less flavoursome or less distinctive or aromatic, then I can totally see the point of spending more money on your tonic, because the gin itself might need a little bit of help in terms of flavour and character and so on. But with my gins particularly, they don't need any help. Hopefully you'll have discovered that already. This one that you're tasting this evening, this one comes in at 44.8% ABV, and that's the lowest ABV of the gins that I produce. Not for any specific reason that I've made them higher ever since. They just happen to come out that way. And when you're distilling, you're blending distillates and diluting with water, the aim is obviously to take the drink that works the best at whatever that ABV might be. If it happened to come out at 38 or 39% ABV, I'd be delighted. Less duty to pay, therefore I can offer it at a less expensive price to people. But that's not the case. It didn't really work at 50% ABV, didn't really work at 40% ABV, but it did work at 44.8% ABV, and that's where it stays. So this one's 44.8. My other gins that are on this shelf up here behind me, you can probably see from left to right. There's the Blue Label Original, and you've got Sicilian Blend, that comes in at 47% ABV. You then have Thailand Limited Edition, which is 46% ABV. And then Trinity at the end, at the back there, which is 49% ABV. And then two subsequent versions, one of Sicilian Blend with cinnamon added, which I've called Cinnamon Twist as a winter blend, which works really nicely. And that one comes in at 40, exactly the same as Sicilian. And then the latest one, which is Smuggler's Strength, right on the end, this end here. This one is, I'm calling it Smuggler's Strength. It's a little bit stronger than Navy Strength, so it's technically an overproof gin at 59% ABV. So that's the range, and that's what ABV they come in at, and obviously they do different things. But this is the one we're talking about. I mean, I'm enjoying it just with a little bit of ice, tiny slice of lemon, the smallest lemon I could find, absolutely tiny lemon, but anyway, it does its job. The other options are orange. I've got some slices of orange and zest of orange peel here. Also, I've got a bergamot, which is quite a rare beast, so that if you've got one of those, you're doing well. And there are a number of different ways to enjoy this gin. So I'll just lubricate slightly before I carry on. Now, I put out some glassware here just to show you the different ways, demonstrate the different ways that you can enjoy this gin. Now, if you like a dry martini, you'll always have one of these in your freezer, or more than one. So this is a dry martini glass, or a martini glass technically, and you can use this for your dry martini. The best thing to do is a freezing cold glass, which this isn't, unfortunately, and then just a nice slug of the gin. I'll pour some in and I'll play along as if it's freezing cold, which it isn't, but a little bit of gin. Now for me, you don't need anything else apart from perhaps a garnish. And for me, I've gone for Queen Green olives. So if you get some of your nice Queen Green olives, I'm just going to go for a couple. So a couple of those. There's a little bit of brine as well. Just pop those in there. And then, personally, I don't think it gets much better than that. The flavours and aromas work so well with something savoury like olive, but also with crushed herbs. I don't have any crushed herbs to show you, but nonetheless, I'm sure some of you do, and I've seen some earlier with a bit of rosemary. Just gently crush that between your hands or in one hand, and just drop into the gin, just as it is, like that. Or you can put some vermouth, dry vermouth in there. Some people like to have different garnishes with their martini, so maybe a silver skin onion, pickled onion, or a gherkin perhaps. Some people just like the brine from the olives and not the olives themselves. But you know, if you're going to go for it, why not go for it? And then not only have you got a drink, you've got something to munch on at the same time. Absolutely beautiful. So that's a dry martini garnished with Queen Green olives. Perfect. If you're really thirsty, you can have a really big one. That's a standard one, and that's a really big one. So you can see what I mean. Anyhow, the other popular glass for gin and tonic these days seems to be the Copper de Ballon. So one of these bad boys, fill that with ice, loads of gin, tiny bit of tonic. Obviously you don't want too much tonic because that dilutes your drink. Funnily enough, the ice, the more ice you put in here, the less dilution you get from the ice. The ice keeps itself cold, stops it from defrosting too much, and really you just get a really cold drink and not too much dilution. But you do have to drink it in a fairly reasonably quick time. If you leave it too long, it will dilute. These are something that became famous in the costas in Spain because obviously it's a very hot climate, and they wanted a nice big G&T. And if you imagine having a G&T in a Slim Jim or a highball glass like this, you're holding it, so you're constantly warming it, and therefore you're diluting the ice, and therefore diluting your drink. Melting the ice and diluting your drink, and that's not really what you want. You want to be able to taste your gin still, get to the bottom of the glass. This is probably okay for the UK, and we get away with it because it's not a particularly hot climate. This, on the other hand, in the Costas, perfect. This one looks very smart. It's plastic. But anyhow, it works. So the other thing I mentioned about the gin was the fact that you could have it as a sipping gin. Now, there's a number of different receptacles you can use for that. Just a couple here to show you. I mean, these are the sort of glasses I'm talking about. A tumbler, couple of ice, gin, zest of orange or lemon, depending on your personal favourite. Makes a fantastic after-dinner drink. If you've not tried this gin neat, then perhaps another time I would definitely recommend it. If you have tried it neat, it'd be really interesting to see what you think. So these are the sort of glass I need. And again, it's literally a fairly good slug of the gin. And then a few blocks of ice for this one, just to get it a bit of movement around the glass. And then I would put probably a little twist of fresh orange zest in there. And that makes a fantastic after dinner drink. Now, you don't have to trust me, you can try it for yourself. But I'm going to just let you have a, absolutely beautiful. Interestingly, as a neat drink, this gin has actually become a bit of a crossover for Scotch drinkers. So normally Scotch drinkers, when we do events, Scotch drinkers will sort of stand back a bit and say, oh no, I don't really like gin, thanks. And I say to them, well, what is it you don't like about gin? Generally speaking, it's not the flavours, it's the texture. So most gin is what I would call a linear drink. So it sort of goes in, goes across your tongue, down your neck, and it's kind of done. You get a bit of warmth and heat, obviously, from the alcohol, but that's pretty much it. You do get some flavour and aroma, of course, but it's a linear drink in that it goes straight in, straight down, and that's it. This, on the other hand, when you drink it neat, or with a little bit of ice or whatever, tends to expand on the palate. The aromas expand, the texture expands, and some of that comes from the aromatics, obviously from things like lavender and so on, but a lot of it comes from the black mulberries and also the tilia flowers. And they are the ones that give it this expansive mouthfeel, and that's the texture that Scotch drinkers that like gin like, if you see what I mean. So that is the kind of crossover drink. If you have a few people that come around for gin and tonic and you've got a bottle of this and you say to them, oh, well, you fancy G&T, and they're, oh, no, I'll have a Scotch. Well, fine. If they want to have a Scotch, great, give them a Scotch. But it might be worth letting them have a try of this just to see if they like that textured style of a sort of smooth sipping gin, which is what this is. So Pothecary Gin does a number of things, and I've sort of responded to people with some questions before this evening. One of the garnishes that I said was a fresh slice of pear, so hopefully that's going on. And that was something that just came up as a different way of serving it. G&T with a slice of fresh pear works really well, but also fresh herbs, as I've already said. So you get a kind of more savoury sort of drink. Personally, I quite like it just as a classic G&T with lemon or orange, or sometimes both. Equally, I like it as a dry martini with Queen green olives, as I demonstrated earlier. And the other thing I like to do is have it as an after-dinner drink in a tumbler with a little bit of ice and a tiny zest of orange or something like that. So there's a number of options for you. As I say, this is the original Pothecary Gin, the blue label. the gin was launched in 2016 on World Gin Day, and even before then, we'd already won double gold at San Francisco with this gin. I sent the bottle off without a label, without any printing on the back, and actually without even a real cork stopper. I had a rubber stopper jammed in there and some fragile tape wrapped around. Sent off 3 bottles of that to San Francisco, and the email back with a congratulatory email that we'd won double gold, which was absolutely mind-blowing considering it was sort of February 2016, February month of 2016, and we'd literally only just finalised the recipe, and I'd only just decided that that's what the end result was going to be. That was how the gin was going to be. We'd had lots of feedback from friends and family, obviously, and it was usually positive. But this double gold really just crystallised the fact that I should probably carry on with it and not change it any further and stick with the recipe, and that's what I've done ever since. Also got a gold medal at China World Spirit Awards and a number of others. We won Best Contemporary Gin UK World Gin Awards in 2017 and regional awards and so on and so forth. So it's not something that is just me telling you that it's quite nice. Obviously, other people seem to think the same, which is fantastic. Hopefully, you've found a new gin that you might be interested in drinking again. It's not for everyone, I understand. If you don't like floral gin, it possibly isn't for you. But having said that, there are plenty of others in the range that probably are. This is exactly the same in terms of the juniper element as the others, pretty much. They've all got a juniper strength to them. They're all fairly strong on the ABV side, as I mentioned, and they're all organic. This one is certified organic currently, as is the Sicilian blend. The others are in a sort of a state of being approved or not quite yet, but they will all eventually be approved as certified organic. So at the moment, the bottles carry the organic logos on the side here for the original blue label and also the Sicilian. That's probably as much information as you need at the moment, and I'm sure you're enjoying your gin. And I'm going to get to the question as soon as I've finished talking to you. But I hope that it's given you a little bit of insight into the difference. This is as I say, a true artisan alembic still that I use, which is copper and organic juniper, organic botanicals, organic spirit, and hopefully that works for you guys. From my point of view, please feel free to follow me on social media. You can look at Pothecary Gin, obviously, on Facebook and Twitter. I'm on Twitter quite a lot, so you'll no doubt see me on there. Instagram, a bit more than before, but not quite as much on Instagram. And website, for the moment, please ignore the website, although, feel free to put it in your box or something, but it's in the process of being updated and renovated with a shop as well. So that's something to look forward to in the future. That will have, obviously, all of these gins in, just the original blue label. So, wrapping things up, I think, cheers, enjoy, and I hope you've had a lovely evening. It's some good fun from my point of view. This is kind of the distillery. There's not much more to it than this. So here's to you. Cheers.